Hi, Kirsten.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
So, recently I've heard the word dopamine a lot,
hmm
and I've just kind of wondered what that means. I know you're doing some research on it,
Yes, I
and
am.
I was just kind of wondering, like, could I ask you some questions about it?
Of course, yeah. It's a pretty hot topic right now.
I
So,
know,
yeah,
right?
go ahead.
I feel like it's like everyone's talking about it.
hmm
So, I was just wondering because I know you're researching dopamine and like addiction and mental health and all the things.
Right.
I was just wondering, like, how you got into that.
So, actually, I got into it because my dad sends me, my sister, and my mom, all three, every single day, undoubtedly, a 3 hour long podcast that he
Wow.
expects us to listen to. He's like, y'all really need to listen to this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do it in my LT. Like, no. And so every day when we come home from school, he's like, have you watched it? And we're all three like, oh no, no.
No.
And this has like actually been going on for 2 years. Like he's persistent. And so then he sets us all down and like gives us like the 30-minute version of like what it was about. But
Right.
normally like all of his podcasts are about some sort of neuroscience topic or like dopamine. And so
Okay.
I'm actually like kind of interested in it. So when he's explaining it, I'm not like too complaining or anything. But also my dad like refers to everything as dopamine. Like
Yeah.
my phone is a dopamine hit. The cold plunge in the pool is a dopamine surge. So like everything has some sort of relation to
Yeah.
dopamine. And so I was like, okay, this is actually kind of interesting.
Mhm.
So that's actually why I started my research on dopamine. And then I've always been interested in like the psychiatric realm of like mental health and addiction. So I kind
Yeah.
of just wanted to like see that correlation.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go with like dopamine and addiction,
Yeah.
obviously. And so I know you kind of like redirected to social media.
Right.
What made you want to like redirect specifically to that?
So, okay. I showed these two graphs at my TED Talk, but
Okay.
they basically both showed like an increasing trend in both suicide rates and addiction rates. So, like the mental health crisis as a whole has been like worsening.
That's not good.
And so it's always been like a steady increase until like
Hmm.
recent years, there's been like a jump in these numbers. And so I kind of wanted to like pinpoint, okay, what could be a factor in this?
Yeah.
And immediately I thought of social media because every adult talks about how bad it is for you and like
Yeah.
how you're addicted to your phone.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, let's actually do some research and see like if this is actually doing anything. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's kind of why I like redirected my research to look at social media and cell
Yeah.
phones. But yeah.
That's so interesting. And I know you kind of like used the word addiction and talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of heard a little bit of like addiction from like a Christian perspective, but I haven't really heard like addiction to social media from like a Christian worldview. And
Right.
I was kind of wondering, like, since you are a Christian, how do you view social media from like that perspective?
So I think just like with any substance, it's important to use things like in moderation.
Yeah.
So with cell phones and with social media, if you prioritize anything over God, it's called like idolatry.
Right.
And so idolatry in the Bible is literally defined as like worshiping, whether
Mm-hmm.
that be like physically worshiping or just prioritizing something or
Yeah.
someone over God, spending more time with that thing or that person more than you should with God. And so I think that when you are constantly scrolling on social media, constantly checking your phone more than you like spend time with your relationship with God, then
Mm-hmm.
that would be a form of idolatry. And I mean,
Oh.
it's the first commandment. Like, you should have no other gods before me. And also,
Yeah.
there's a story in Exodus of like the golden calf
Mm-hmm.
and that whole thing. And God punished the Israelites for that. So, idolatry is like heavily looked down upon in the Bible. So,
Yeah.
like I said, if you use smartphones and like social media for the right reasons, then it should be fine. But
Yeah.
when you're like overstimulating yourself with it, it's no good. But yeah.
Yeah. I know. I kind of like it's interesting to think about because I always thought about idolatry as like a literal thing that you're like bowing down to, like hands and
Right.
knees, right? But when I think about it, I feel like before iPhones and social media, it kind of became more of like an essence and like a person, like you put
Right.
someone else above God.
Yeah.
But now it's like come full circle back to like the physical entity of like you're putting like this
Yeah.
small block that's like fits in your pocket above God, which is so
It's
crazy to me.
weird. It's weird. And then like people actually want you to be addicted to these things because it gives them money, like social media
And that's crazy that
platforms.
people are like fueling your addiction.
Yeah. No, I know. It is crazy. But I mean, that goes back to like drugs. People deal drugs, so.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
I
know
think
you
it's
kind of
crazy.
mentioned like drugs, I guess, in a little bit, kind of in relation to that.
Mhm.
And I know drugs has a lot to do with like reward systems and pathways and
Right,
stuff.
yeah.
And I was wondering if that changes with social media or like anything like that.
So, because children are getting social media at such young ages and like
Yeah.
cell phones at such young ages now because they're almost deemed as like necessary.
Mhm.
Their brains are so malleable. Like even our prefrontal cortexes, we're 18 and our prefrontal cortexes are still developing. But
Yeah.
children are literally getting phones at like age 8 or before
That's
that.
crazy.
And it is crazy. So when you're constantly like fueling someone with dopamine, like these
Yeah.
little spurts of like dopamine hits, it changes the way the brain like receives and like responds to dopamine. Like it sensitizes or desensitizes your brain
Yeah.
to like a normal like reactive dopamine
Mhm.
reward system. And so what happens is normal activities like hanging out with your friends or like going to swim in the pool, like that would
Yeah.
normally be so fun and like make you so enthusiastic and so excited. Like when children are constantly on their phones or constantly engaging on social media or just like online, these activities that are supposed to be fun and like supposed to generate like motivation and like positive feeling,
Yeah.
they're no longer as fun or like as enthusiastic about these things. So it like causes your brain to be desensitized to like many different activities that like
Mhm.
people our age would even think was fun. So
That's crazy.
yeah, it's actually weird.
I know, I feel like I've seen that a lot, like, I
Mhm.
babysit all the time, and I feel
Oh,
like
I
the
know.
little kids that I babysit, like, they'll be on their iPads all the time, and then I'll be like, "Let's go outside and play a game or something," and when I was their age, I'd be like, "Yes, like, let's do that. That
Oh,
sounds so
yeah.
fun," but they're like, "No, like, I wanna watch YouTube," and it's like, "What?"
I know. And they know things that like I didn't even know
Yes,
about.
they know things, and they're, like, talking to me about things, and I'm like, "You should not, like, I don't wanna talk to you about this, like, you're 8 years old, like, I don't
Yeah,
this is uncomfortable."
it's exposing children to like information that they should not
Yeah,
know or be aware
yeah.
of yet.
And so,
So,
like,
yeah.
with those dopamine hits and stuff, do you think there are, like, similarities between social media and drugs, or do you think there's, like, more differences? Like, have you researched that at all?
So there obviously are like the obvious
Mhm.
similarities and yes, I have researched that. But the similarities between the two, they both generate a good deal of dopamine.
Yeah.
But I would say I feel like a lot of people like to like relate the two together, but I would say there's more differences than there are similarities.
Interesting.
So with drugs, when you take a drug, you get this huge dopamine surge. Like you
Right.
get depending on the drug, but you get a huge dopamine surge. It's like a longer dopamine surge and then
Mhm.
it gradually comes down.
Right.
And then you go for that next drug, it still gets up there but not as high, same thing. Follows a trend. But with social media, notifications, your phone, stuff like that, every time you check your phone, like seriously, every time your phone lights up with notification, you get a little like spurt of dopamine.
Interesting.
And so you're kind of being constantly fed like a rapid fire dopamine like system.
Yeah.
And so with that, there hasn't really been like studies on what that constant like rapid fire dopamine does to you.
Yeah.
So some researchers are actually saying this will be like more detrimental to like your reward pathways than drugs are.
Yeah.
And so, of course, like we are the test subjects in this because social media and smartphones were invented in the 1900s,
Yeah, they're
like the
pretty
late
new.
1900s. And so, like our generation and then the one below us, like we're the test subjects. So it's kind of hard to say like the long-term effects of like what this will do, but the short-term already aren't good. So we'll
That's
see.
kinda
Scary. Like
Yeah.
when you think about it,
Mhm.
because you think about like all the other drugs that people did before they knew the long term effects, and, like how it's affected their health,
Mhm.
and this is just like another one.
I know.
And like you said, we are the test subjects, and you specifically looked at Gen Z.
Yes.
Is that why, or like were there more reasons behind that?
So, yes, because one, we're the ones that kind of like grew up with it. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't like graduate college and then get a phone. Like, we're like growing up surrounded by it. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
literally necessary. Like, I need this computer to do all my schoolwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I looked at Gen Z for that reason.
Mhm.
And also because when I was trying to pinpoint like where this jump and like all those numbers that I was talking about, like the mental health crisis, the suicide rates, the addiction rates.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let's figure out when social media and cell phones were developed. So
Right.
cell phones were developed in 1973.
Okay.
And then social media was developed in the late 1990s. So I was just like, okay, like Gen Z, because it was like flip phones and stuff.
Yeah. It was like.
It wasn't like advanced technology.
Yeah,
So I was like,
yeah.
okay, it makes sense to study our generation, especially because there's a lot of stigmas surrounding our generation.
Is there?
Yeah, there is. And our mental health is detrimentally worse than
Yeah.
any other
For
one.
sure,
So I
for
was
sure.
like, let's figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Let's
kind of our
figure out, like,
agency.
What's going on? I mean, speaking of kind of like the mental health crisis, I know that you talked to both like a neurologist and a psychiatrist, and I was just
Yes.
wondering, like, did they say anything that had like something in common, or did they have like completely different takes on it? Like, what'd you get from
So-
those interviews?
They both agreed upon the fact that social media could possibly, and they both agreed upon the fact that, in their opinion, this will be more detrimental to people's like well-being than drugs.
Are you serious?
Yes, and they're like it's more addictive than drugs,
Oh my
and
gosh,
which I thought was like actually kind of crazy because
that's so crazy. That's like
I mean I have a
scary.
phone and I will tell you that I'm not addicted to it, but I probably am. Like I mean
Yeah.
I'm kind of blindsided by it, and I think we all are.
I feel like it's so normalized. Like everyone picks up their phone all the time, and so if someone's like, "Oh, I'm addicted to it," it's like, well, everyone else is, so
Mm-hmm.
who cares?
And I think the difference between like phones and like social media and like drugs is like there's such like that negative like oh drugs, but like with phones like everyone uses one, like what's
Yeah.
the problem? You know
Everyone
what I
has
mean?
social media, like
So
so.
it's like because there's this positive reinforcement with it, it's like making it more and more addictive to people. But so they both agreed on that, and then
Yeah.
they also both agreed on like how malleable like children's brains are and like
Mhm.
how bad this is because our brains are still developing. We're
Right.
causing them to develop differently. And then the neurologist actually mentioned something that I literally never thought of before. He kind of gave like an evolutionary like viewpoint on it, and he
Right.
was like, dopamine was made like as kind of like a reinforcement like pathway in the brain. Like it was supposed to get you motivated, like to do something again. And so like when you're like scared to do something and then you follow through with it, it releases dopamine because it's like, oh, I just did that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so at first he was explaining how like hunter gatherers like it's scary to like hunt an animal. 'cause
Right.
You could die
Right.
depending on the animal. But like when they would kill an animal, they'd get that surge of dopamine and they'd be like, okay, well, it makes them want to do it again. But this was like for survival.
Right.
Like, obviously, that's good intent. That's necessary, like actually necessary.
Yeah, like when you need to eat.
Yeah. And so he was just talking about how like dopamine now has been taken like so out of context. And so because of that, like it's so distorted. Like everything about like the reward pathways because they veered from what they were like originally intended to do. Because like everything's been so much more advanced. Everything's like come so far since then. And so it's like what taking it away from like the evolutionary aspect, like just what God like intended like our brains to be like and like it was supposed to be a good thing. Like you're supposed to be motivated after
Right.
and like want to do something again, but like
Mhm.
for a good reason. But now there's like all these like bad things that will trigger dopamine and like I mean it causes the reinforcement, it causes you to want to do it again, but it might not be the best thing to do again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the neurologist said that. And then the psychiatrist works with children.
Okay.
So he had a lot to say about
I'm
how
sure.
children have like no attention span now. Like none. Like they're looking at you and then they're looking at the wall and they're looking at their toes. Like no attention span. And
Yeah.
on top of that, no social skills. Like they cannot hold eye contact
Or conversation.
or a conversation. Like they just don't know how to do it. And when they're answering questions, they look at their parents. Like constant. It's like the how old are you? You know how old you are, you can answer it. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting because I was like, that's just so sad. Like I don't know how people are gonna do
I feel like I've
interviews.
even seen that like as of recent. Not to like hate on the freshmen, but I feel like I've seen that as grades get like younger and younger, even the freshmen now. Like it is so hard to have a conversation with one of them or like talk to
Mhm.
them. Their attention spans are not the same.
No.
And like I've heard from teachers that I'm close with that like it's become a difficult year for them because these freshmen are just not
Their
what they used to
behavior's
be.
just
Like their
different.
behavior is just different
Yeah.
because of those like one those crucial years during COVID,
Yeah.
but two like them getting social media so early.
Yeah, there are obviously like different factors and there's like multiple factors that
Right.
explains people's just mental health addiction, all that in general. But like it is very, very, very like I feel like showcasing and obvious of like what phones do
Yeah.
to children. Like, I mean, even like I feel like there are children who are much younger than me that are just constantly on a device. Like they don't take their eyes off of it. Like I babysit too.
Yeah.
And children, I'll be like, hey, I'll try to talk to them and they
They're
don't
like
even hear me.
dismiss you.
They don't even
It's so
hear me.
bad.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Like if my babysitter came when I was that age, I'd literally like start running to the door and be like, she's here, she's here.
I used to get
Like-
so excited. I just wanted them to play with me, but now
Same.
all they want to do is like
Like I have to like take
Look
away
at
their
the TV.
iPad and they start like crying and I'm like, why am I here if you're just gonna be on your iPad the whole time? Like
it's
what is the point?
It's so sad.
It's so sad. So I know you did interviews, but you also did a survey, right?
Mhm,
So what
yes.
were those like results from the survey and all the things?
Okay, so let me just give some context about this survey. I sent it out to like our school,
Okay,
Kirsten
Kirsten
Christian,
and then I also posted it on my Instagram, and I targeted it just at Generation Z.
Okay.
Again, that was my target audience. That was my participants for
Right,
this.
right.
And so I did it based on a Likert scale. So I gave like statements like, I often feel stressed or anxious when I'm away from my phone. And it was like strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree.
Right.
And so it was all like organized like that. And so the results from that though, I was like, ooh, okay. Wow, this is actually kind of interesting to me. So people tend to get phones around 11 to 14. I got a phone my 8th grade year, so I think that puts me at like 14.
Yeah, I was 10.
Yeah.
But okay, I didn't get social media until 8th grade, but I was 10 when I got a phone, so I
Yeah.
was on the younger side.
Yeah, so our generation, that's pretty young, I would say, to
Yeah.
get a phone. And so most people get it around that age. And then what I actually thought was really interesting was like, there was a statement, like I just said, it was like, I often feel stressed or anxious when I'm away from my phone.
Right.
And like 62% of people were like, no, disagree. I never feel anxious when I'm away from my phone. But then there was
Okay.
this same statement without the part about the phone. It was like, I often feel stressed or anxious. And like 7% of people, like almost 80% of people were like, yes, like strongly agree. I'm always anxious. I'm always like upset.
Interesting.
And I was just like, are we like do we know that our phones are doing this to us, or like do we just think it's because of something else? Because
Yeah.
we're a very like anxious generation, very
For
depressed
sure.
generation.
No, I would completely agree
And
with that.
so it's like people won't admit, they will not like admit to their phones like causing them any stress at all. They like think this is like almost like a safe spot. But like, have you ever heard of doom scrolling?
Yes.
Okay. Like people will literally sit on their phone for hours and just
Yeah.
scroll on TikTok, scroll on Instagram, and it
Yeah.
progressively gets more and more and more depressing and puts them in this like hole. But then they'll do it again the next night, even though they're like majorly depressed from it. So it's like it's almost more scary that we are unwilling to admit what our phones are
Mhm.
making us feel like and like what social media is making us feel like. So I gathered that from the survey a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting. And then what I also saw is there was this statement about like, I often get distracted really easily. And like, literally, everyone was like, yes, like, all the way. And then there's also 43%, if I'm remembering correctly, or something around 40%,
Yeah.
abuse other substances, whether that's like gaming, drugs, alcohol, like they have such,
Interesting.
right? And
It's weird that they would like admit to abusing other substances
gonna
and
say.
not their phone.
I was gonna say that, and then also that's out of the people who did admit to it. So the people who like are like, "Oh, is this anonymous?" I mean, it was. I have no idea who said that they do, but the people who are like, "I'm just gonna," no, I don't. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I'm sure
Yeah.
that number is like higher than that. So
That's crazy.
yeah, I was just like,
That's
I
so
don't know.
interesting.
But yeah, that's kind of. Oh, and then my last question on that survey was, I can improve my grades if I stop using my phone so much, and literally everyone was like, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
It's interesting that they won't admit to like being addicted because they know they're gonna have to do something about it. And I
Mhm.
feel like people, I mean, don't want to get rid of their phone, which is addiction. So
yeah,
I don't know.
literally.
So one thing I was kind of thinking about when you were talking about that was like more recent technology that's coming out. Like for example, the whole Apple like VR kind of like watch movies and play games
Oh,
and all
yeah.
that. And so I was kind of wondering, like, as technology becomes more advanced, do you think mental health crisis and addictions will continue to like climb? Or how do you think it's going to affect that from your research?
I definitely think so. Definitely think so. Especially with Generation Alpha. Is that the one below us?
Yeah, but it's like weird because an 8-year-old is Gen Z, but I think like a 6-year-old is Gen Alpha
Yeah, especially with them though, because
because they're
parents like
babies.
hand them an iPad like born. Like
Like-
born, here's your iPad. Like watch this show, like Miss Rachel. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
it's like
so
I mean, it's so easy for the parent to just like sit their kid in front of a TV and like give them endless entertainment for hours.
yeah.
without realizing how screwed up basically their kid's gonna be because of
No.
it.
And also, like, this doesn't really have much to do with social media, but it does have stuff to do with, like, technology and, like, more advancements, like AI.
Right.
The power to, like, edit in general in AI. Because, one, now you don't have to do anything for yourself, which we already talked about how people can't have a face-to-face interaction. Imagine, like, not doing any of your work and then trying to have a conversation about your work.
Come on
Like,
now.
it's not gonna happen. So AI is just not helpful to this at all. And then also the ability to edit, because social comparison, like, I mean, we walk around and you're already like, oh, 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 like comparing
Yeah.
yourself, like at least as a girl, especially.
Especially, yeah.
And then when you have access to literally look up or look at anyone you want online and compare yourself to them, like, you think there's like eating disorders and mental health now, like it just is going
Like,
to
get ready.
continue to climb.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to keep getting worse, and
Yeah.
hopefully
was like-
something.
I was watching this documentary and this girl was showing how she like edits and she's like, if we want to make her arms smaller and her teeth wider and stuff like that. And the girl was like, it's okay to edit to feel better about yourself as long as you don't have like 15 million followers and like little girls are looking at you. But at the same
Mhm.
time, it's like everyone's looking at you always. Like if you have 2
Mhm.
followers, you're influencing them. And so it's like
Exactly.
so hard.
You're an influencer one way or
Because
another.
in social media, like